the silence dark, whispers in the midnight park. The night is cold, there's no escape. Ghostly figures take their shape.
Welcome, horror fans, to Real Talk Horror Edition. I'm your host, Josh, and today, we're not just turning off the lights. We're plunging headfirst into the shadows of cinema's darkest corners. Because today I have a list, but not just any list. It's a journey through fear itself. From the blood-soaked slashers that made me scream, to the psychological mind-benders that burrowed deep into my brain. Whether you're a seasoned horror aficionado or someone who peeks through their fingers during the scary parts, this countdown is for you. I'm exploring the films that, for me, shaped the genre, that shocked me and redefined what it means to be scared. These are the movies that carved their names in my personal horror history with bloody precision, leaving me mesmerized, haunted, and occasionally questioning my decision to press play. Now, horror isn't just one thing, is it? It's a kaleidoscope of terror. There's the primal thrill of a masked killer lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The unsettling chill of an unholy presence, its whispers echoing in the darkest corners of a room. Or the pure adrenaline of a relentless creature that refuses to stop hunting. And let's not forget the cerebral terror. Those films that twist reality and leave you doubting your own sanity. So like I said, tonight, we'll be counting down my top 25 horror films of all time. A list I agonized over, because let's face it, narrowing down the best of the best in any genre, especially one so diverse, is no easy feat. These aren't just my favorites. They're the films that broke boundaries. They're films that terrified millions. And in some cases, some of these films forever altered the way I experience fear on screen. Now, some of you may agree wholeheartedly with my picks. Others, well, you might find yourself screaming at your screen or your phone or wherever you listen when your favorite doesn't make the cut. But that's the beauty of horror. What scares us, what moves us, and what sticks with us is deeply personal. But one thing's for sure, every film on this list has earned its place in the pantheon of my fear. And don't worry, I've got a little surprise for you later in the episode. Before we reveal my top 2, we'll take a moment to acknowledge some of the films that just missed the cut. These honorable mentions are terrifying in their own right, and they deserve their share of the spotlight. So let's turn off the lights, grab our popcorn, and prepare for a countdown that'll take you from haunted houses to cursed videotapes, from demonic possessions to blood-soaked cabins in the woods. Each entry is a portal into fear, an invitation to relive the spine-tingling, pulse-pounding magic of horror cinema at its finest. Are you ready to face the dark? Well, let's dive in, starting with number 25. Alright, horror fans, it's time to kick off the countdown with the first 5 films that showcase just how broad and diverse the horror genre can be. This subset are the childhood terrors to gritty vampires, surreal nightmares to psychological hauntings. These are the movies that set the stage for what's to come. Let's get started. Number 25, 1987's The Monster Squad. What happens when you take the charm of the Goonies, mix it with the Universal monsters, add a dash of 80s flair? You get The Monster Squad, directed by the completely underrated Fred Dekker, this cult classic is an absolute blast. It's got Dracula, and for me, one of the best Draculas ever on screen. The Wolfman, who, as we all know, has nards, and even the creature from the Black Lagoon. But don't let the fun fool you. This movie doesn't shy away from delivering genuine thrills, especially for younger viewers. Remember the creepy transformation of the Wolfman, or Dracula's piercing red-eyed stare? This is a film that balances humor, heart, and horror in perfect harmony. For those of us who grew up in the 80s, or just love retro horror, The Monster Squad is like a warm, spooky hug. It's a love letter to classic monster cinema, wrapped up in a coming-of-age adventure that still mostly holds up today. Number 24. Staying in 1987, we have The Gate. Speaking of childhood terrors, let's move on to The Gate. If you ever thought, what if Stranger Things went full-on nightmare mode? Well, this is your answer. Directed by Tibor Takacs, this underrated gem takes the concept of kids fighting supernatural forces to a much darker place. The story revolves around two kids who accidentally open a portal to hell in one of their backyards. Sounds like a typical Saturday, right? But what makes this movie unforgettable are the practical effects, those stop-motion creatures, the eerie atmospheric lighting, and the grotesque transformations. Everything about The Gate feels tangible and terrifying. And let's not forget that behind the supernatural horror lies a deeper exploration of childhood fears, abandonment, loss, and the anxiety of just growing up. It's really a perfect blend of 80s nostalgia and genuinely spine-chilling horror. And at number 23, I guess we're staying in 1987. Kind of a theme in my life. Must have been a good year for me. We've got Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark. Now, if you've ever thought vampires couldn't be terrifying anymore, this film may change your mind. It strips away the gothic romance we often associate with vampires and replaces it with raw, brutal, and unapologetically gritty horror. This isn't your typical fanged aristocrats sipping wine scenario. Near Dark introduces us to a family of nomadic bloodsuckers wreaking havoc across rural America. There's a rugged, Western aesthetic here that sets it apart from other vampire films. And the performances, particularly Bill Paxton's absolutely unhinged Severin, are unforgettable. Bigelow masterfully blends horror and action, creating a film that's as stylish as it is savage. It's not just a vampire movie. It's a meditation on the nature of humanity, love, and survival. If you haven't seen Near Dark, do yourself a favor and seek it out. And at number 22, we dive headfirst into the realm of the surreal with David Lynch's Eraserhead. And let me just say this, if you're looking for a straightforward narrative, this is not your movie. But if you want to experience pure, unfiltered nightmare fuel, welcome to Lynch's world. Eraserhead is a film that defies categorization. Its stark black and white visuals, haunting industrial soundscape, and grotesque imagery create an atmosphere unlike anything else in cinema. The film explores themes of parenthood, isolation, and existential dread in a way that's deeply unsettling. From the famous baby to the lady in the radiator, every frame of this film feels like stepping into someone's most private, horrifying dreams. It's not for the faint of heart, but for those who dare, Eraserhead is a masterpiece of experimental horror. Now, at number 21, 2014's The Babadook. Rounding out the first part of our list, Jennifer Kent's The Babadook. On the surface, it's a classic monster movie about a sinister child's book that comes to life. But dig deeper, and you'll find a profoundly moving story about grief, motherhood, and mental health. Essie Davis gives a powerful performance as Amelia, a single mother, grappling with the death of her husband while raising her troubled son. The Babadook itself is a terrifying manifestation of her repressed emotions, and Kent uses the monster as a metaphor for the struggles we often hide from the world. But don't mistake this for a drama disguised as horror. The Babadook is genuinely scary. The sound design, the shadowy cinematography, and the relentless presence of the monster all work together to create a suffocating sense of dread. It's a modern classic that proves horror can be as emotionally resonant as it is terrifying. Alright folks, we've just scratched the surface of this terrifying countdown. From nostalgic monster mashups to deeply unsettling psychological horror, these 5 films have already showcased the incredible range this genre has to offer. But the real nightmare is only beginning. Stick around as we dive deeper into the darkness with numbers 20 through 16. At number 20, 1992's Candyman. Say his name if you dare. Candyman isn't just a horror film. It's a modern urban legend brought to life, weaving together supernatural terror and razor-sharp social commentary. Directed by Bernard Rose and based on Clive Barker's story The Forbidden, this film dives into themes of race, class, and the power of folklore in shaping collective fears. But what truly elevates Candyman is Tony Todd's haunting portrayal of the villain. With his deep, resonating voice and his magnetic presence, Todd transforms Candyman into more than just a vengeful spirit. He's tragic, seductive, and terrifying all at once. A character who lingers in your mind and gets under your skin. And let's not forget Philip Glass's mesmerizing score, which adds this almost operatic quality to the horror. Whether you see it as a supernatural slasher or a meditation on systemic inequality, Candyman leaves a bloody hook-shaped mark on the genre and my imagination. For number 19, we go to 1983 in Videodrome. Long Live the New Flesh. David Cronenberg's Videodrome is an unsettling dive into the dark intersection of technology, media, and body horror. This is Cronenberg at his most provocative, exploring how our obsession with screens and sensationalism can blur the line between reality and hallucination. James Woods stars as Max Wren, a sleazy TV executive who stumbles upon a pirated broadcast that showcases grotesque violence. As Wren digs deeper, he becomes consumed, literally, by the medium itself. The film's grotesque special effects, from pulsating videotapes to stomach VCR hybrids, are nightmarish and unforgettable. But I think what makes Videodrome so timeless is its prescience. Cronenberg's vision of technology's insidious control over our lives feels even more relevant in today's hyper-connected world. It's disturbing, thought-provoking, and a reminder that sometimes the scariest horrors are the ones we create ourselves. At number 18, I've got 2009's House of the Devil. If you are a fan of 70s and 80s horror, Ty West's House of the Devil is a masterclass in retro-style filmmaking. From its grainy cinematography to its synth-heavy score, this film transports you back to the golden era of horror, where the shadows were darker, the suspense was thicker, and the blood flowed freely. The plot follows Samantha, a college student who takes a babysitting job in a remote house on the night of a lunar eclipse. Sounds simple, right? But the slow burn tension is almost unbearable, as Samantha starts to suspect that something isn't quite right. West expertly plays with your nerves, building dread with every creaking floorboard and lingering shot. And then comes the explosive finale, a violent, satanic nightmare that rewards your patience tenfold. This is a modern classic that proves you don't need jump scares every 2 minutes to terrify your audience. Sometimes it's what you don't see that keeps you awake at night. For number 17, we return to 1987 with Hellraiser. Clive Barker's Hellraiser is literally the stuff of nightmares. This is a film about the blurred boundaries between pleasure and pain, life and death, and human and otherworldly. Barker, adapting his own novella, The Hellbound Heart, introduces us to the unforgettable Cenobites, led by the enigmatic and horrifying Pinhead, played with chilling authority by Doug Bradley. What sets Hellraiser apart is its raw, visceral depiction of desire and torment. The story follows a puzzle box, essentially a gateway to hell, that unleashes the Cenobites on those who solve it. But this isn't your typical gore fest. Barker infuses the film with a gothic elegance, crafting a world where horror feels as seductive as it is repulsive. From its iconic imagery to its deeply unsettling themes, Hellraiser remains as disturbing today as it was in 1987. It's a film that doesn't just show you horror, it drags you into its twisted world and makes you feel it. At number 16 is 1979's Alien. In space, no one can hear you scream. Ridley Scott's Alien isn't just a sci-fi horror masterpiece. It's a study in claustrophobia, suspense, and the primal fear of the unknown. From the moment the Nostromo's crew stumbles upon a derelict spaceship on a desolate planet, you know you're in for something extraordinary. The creature designed by H.R. Geiger is unparalleled. The xenomorph isn't just a monster, it's an embodiment of pure terror. Elegant, relentless, and horrifyingly alien. And then there's Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, one of the most iconic final girls in horror history. Ripley's intelligence, resilience, and vulnerability set the standard for strong female protagonists in genre films. What makes Alien truly terrifying is its atmosphere. The dark, industrial corridors of the Nostromo, combined with Jerry Goldsmith's eerie score, create a palpable sense of dread. Every shadow hides a potential threat. Every sound echoes with danger. Even after more than 40 years, Alien remains a flawless blend of science fiction and horror. It's a film that proves that the scariest thing in the universe might just be survival itself. Now let's continue our descent into horror history with 5 films that explore everything from folk traditions to family trauma, pure madness, and yes, buckets of gore. These next picks demonstrate just how diverse and boundary-pushing the genre can be. So without further ado, let's dive into the dark depths of numbers 15 through 11. At number 15, we go back to 1973 in The Wicker Man. Now this is an experience. The Wicker Man is the ultimate folk horror tale. A slow burning story of faith, ritual, and the unsettling power of an isolated community. Directed by Robin Hardy, the film follows a devoutly Christian police officer who travels to a remote Scottish island to investigate the disappearance of a young girl. But nothing is as it seems on Summer Isle. The locals are eccentric and secretive, their pagan rituals both fascinating and unnerving. The story builds like a symphony, layering unease upon unease until it crescendos in one of the most iconic finales in horror history. And that final scene, if you've seen it, you know. The massive effigy, the chants, the raw primal terror of realizing what's about to happen. The Wicker Man ends not with a scream, but with a searing gut punch that sticks with you. It's haunting, it's provocative, and it is a masterclass in atmospheric horror. At number 14, we go back to 1986 and Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. If you're looking for a feel-good horror movie, this is not it. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is as raw and unrelenting as the genre gets. Directed by John McNaughton and loosely based on the real-life crimes of Henry Lee Lucas. This film strips away any pretense of glamour or stylization often associated with serial killer narratives. Instead, it delivers a stark, unflinching look into the day-to-day life of a killer. Michael Rooker's portrayal of Henry is terrifyingly precisely because of how normal he seems. Cold, detached, and disturbingly matter-of-fact about his crimes, the violence is brutal, but what really makes the film horrifying is its banality. There is no catharsis here, no justice, no redemption. It just forces us to confront the darkest aspects of humanity, leaving us unsettled and introspective. If horror is meant to disturb and provoke thought, Henry is an undeniable success. Number 13, we jump forward all the way to 2018 and Hereditary. Now here's a film that rocked modern horror. Ari Aster's Hereditary is an emotional and psychological assault. On the surface, it's about a grieving family dealing with a series of increasingly bizarre and tragic events. But beneath that, it's a meditation on generational trauma, mental illness, and the insidious ways our families shape us. And then, of course, there's the supernatural. Aster masterfully weaves psychological horror with occult elements, creating a narrative that feels deeply personal and otherworldly at the same time. But we have to talk about that performance. Toni Collette is a revelation. Her raw, visceral portrayal of a mother unraveling under the weight of grief and terror is nothing short of Oscar-worthy. She carries the film, makes us feel every ounce of her pain, confusion, and desperation. And the scares, they hit hard. From shadowy figures lurking in corners, to a jaw-dropping dinner table confrontation, and that unforgettable finale, Hereditary cements its place as a modern horror masterpiece. At number 12, we go to 2015 and The Witch. Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Those 7 words sent shivers down spines everywhere, and with good reason. Robert Eggers' The Witch is an atmospheric triumph, a meticulously crafted period piece that transforms you to 17th century New England where paranoia and religious fervor run rampant. The story follows a Puritan family banished from their community and forced to live on the edge of a dark, foreboding forest. Strange occurrences and mounting tensions unravel the family's bonds, creating an ever-simmering sense of dread. Eggers doesn't rely on jump scares. Instead, he immerses us in the world of the film, using authentic dialogue, natural lighting, and an oppressive sound design to build this palpable sense of unease. And Black Phillip has become an icon in his own right, representing temptation and the sinister allure of the unknown. The Witch is a slow burn, but its chilling atmosphere and thought-provoking themes make it a standout in the folk horror genre. At number 11, we have 1991's Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead. Alright, horror fans, let's lighten things up, sort of. Dead Alive is probably the grossest film on this list, and I mean that as the highest compliment. Before Peter Jackson became synonymous with hobbits and epic fantasy, he gave us this gloriously unhinged splatterfest that has to be seen to be believed. The premise: a young man's overbearing mother is bitten by a Sumatran rat monkey, yes, really, and becomes a zombie. What follows is an escalating series of grotesque, over-the-top set pieces involving lawnmowers, kung fu priests, and more bodily fluids than you can imagine. But here's the thing. Dead Alive is more than just gore for gore's sake. It's absurdly creative, darkly funny, and packed with a manic energy that's impossible to resist. The practical effects are mind-blowing, and the sheer audacity of the film makes it a cult classic that stands the test of time. If you haven't seen it, prepare yourself. It's one of the bloodiest and weirdest rides in horror history. Alright, from folk horror to unrelenting psychological terror to the sheer insanity of Dead Alive, this batch of films showcased the incredible range of horror as a genre. But we're just getting started, the countdown continues. And now that we've reached our top 10, the cream of the crop, the scares that stay with you and burrow deep under your skin, these next 5 films not only define the horror genre, I think they transcend it, influencing pop culture and cinema as a whole. So buckle up, because the fear factor is about to hit an all-time high. At number 10, we go back in time to 1968 for Psycho. Let's start with an absolute classic. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is the horror movie that changed everything. Before Psycho, the genre was dominated by gothic tales and creature features. Hitchcock pulled us into something far more intimate, far more disturbing. Picture it, Marion Crane, a young woman on the run, stops at the Bates Motel. We all know what happens next, the shower scene. It's not just a murder, but it is a masterclass in tension, editing, and the power of suggestion. Hitchcock didn't show the knife penetrating flesh. He didn't need to. The editing, combined with Bernard Herrmann's streaking score, made us feel every terrifying moment. And let's not forget Norman Bates. Anthony Perkins delivered a performance that was equal parts charming, awkward, and utterly chilling. The twist? Pure genius. It wasn't just shocking. It redefined the way stories were told in cinema. Without Psycho, there's probably no slasher genre as we know it today. For number 9, we move forward 10 years to 1978 and Dawn of the Dead. Next up is George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, the zombie movie that's about so much more than zombies. Sure, there's plenty of gore and undead mayhem, but this film is also a razor-sharp critique of consumer culture. Set in a shopping mall, Dawn of the Dead forces us to ask, are the zombies outside any less mindless than the humans inside, consumed by their desire for material possessions? Romero wasn't just making a horror movie, he was holding up a mirror to society, and what we saw wasn't pretty. But let's not forget the horror. The practical effects by Tom Savini are legendary, with gut-wrenching moments of gore that still make an audience squirm. Dawn of the Dead isn't just a zombie movie, it's the zombie movie. Number 8, we jump forward again to 1984 this time, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Whatever you do, don't fall asleep. Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street brought terror into the place we thought we were safe, our dreams. Freddy Krueger, with his charred face and razor-sharp glove, became an instant icon, haunting the nightmares of an entire generation. The film didn't just give us inventive kills, it introduced us to a new kind of horror, surreal, otherworldly, and deeply psychological. Craven blurred the lines between dreams and reality, keeping us on edge and questioning what was real. And let's talk about Freddy. Robert Englund's performance was equal parts terrifying and charismatic, turning Freddy into one of the most memorable villains in horror history. Add in a young Johnny Depp in one of the most creative death scenes ever, and you've got a film that's as inventive as it is terrifying. For number 7, we're going to stay right here in 1984 with Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. Jason Voorhees. By the time Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter came around, Jason had already carved his way into horror history. But this fourth installment, it's where the franchise reached its bloody, suspenseful peak. From the opening moments, The Final Chapter makes it clear that it's not messing around. The kills are brutal, the suspense is palpable, and the 80s charm irresistible. And let's not forget the characters. They're not just cannon fodder. They're people you actually care about. What makes their fates all the more horrifying. This film also gives us young Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis, who becomes one of Jason's most memorable adversaries. It's gory, it's suspenseful, and it's pure slasher gold. At number 6, we'll fall back to 1978 again for Halloween. Finally, we reach John Carpenter's Halloween. And what can I say that hasn't already been said about this masterpiece? It's the slasher film that probably defined the genre. With its minimalistic approach, Carpenter proved that less is more. Michael Myers, aka The Shape, isn't just a killer. He's the embodiment of pure evil, a force of nature that can't be reasoned with or stopped. Jamie Lee Curtis, in her breakout role as Laurie Strode, became the ultimate final girl, showing strength and resourcefulness in the face of unimaginable terror. And then there's the score. Carpenter's haunting, simple piano melody is instantly recognizable and deeply unsettling. It's not just a soundtrack, it's a heartbeat, a constant reminder that the shape is always lurking, always watching. When you watch Halloween, you feel like you're being stalked. Every creak of a floorboard, every shadow in the corner of your eye feels like Michael Myers is right there waiting. Now, that's it for this round of iconic horror. But don't go anywhere. We're creeping closer to the top 5. These films take terror for me to new heights and cement their places as legends of the genre. Stick around. The best is yet to come. Alright, let's dive back into the countdown as we approach the pinnacle of terror, starting with number 5. For number 5, we're in 1982 with The Thing. In 1982, John Carpenter unleashed a nightmare that would redefine horror for generations. The Thing. Now, what makes The Thing such a masterpiece isn't just its terrifying premise. It's the way it takes fear and amplifies it through isolation, distrust, and the grotesque unknown. Set in the desolate frozen wasteland of Antarctica, the film traps you with a team of researchers as they face a shape-shifting alien capable of imitating any living being. Now let's talk about those practical effects. Rob Bottin's creature designs remain a benchmark for practical horror effects. Whether it's the infamous blood test scene or the horrifying reveal of a dog transforming into, well, something unspeakable, The Thing's visuals are still jaw-dropping over 40 years later. CGI might have its place, but there's something visceral about effects that you feel like you could almost reach out and touch. And then there's the paranoia, because Carpenter doesn't just show you terror, he makes you feel it. Who can you trust? Who's still human? The Thing doesn't give easy answers, and its chillingly ambiguous ending still sparks debate today. It's a film that grabs you by the throat and doesn't let you go. For number 4, we go back to 1973 and The Exorcist. Now at number 4, we have a film often hailed as the scariest of all time, The Exorcist. Directed by William Friedkin, this isn't just a movie. This is also a hell of an experience. When The Exorcist hit theaters in 1973, it reportedly caused fainting, walkouts, and even calls for it to be banned. And watching it today, it's easy to see why. The film digs deep into primal fears, the fear of the unknown, the fear of evil, and perhaps most chillingly, the fear of losing control over ourselves or our loved ones. It tells the story of the young girl Reagan, whose innocent life is turned upside down by demonic possession. What follows is a battle of wills, faith versus evil, science versus the supernatural, all played out with devastating intensity. And let's not forget the groundbreaking special effects. From Reagan's head-spinning moment to her horrifying levitation scenes, these visuals were ahead of their time and remain iconic. But what truly sets the film apart is its humanity. This is a story about a mother's desperation, a priest's crisis of faith, and the unrelenting horror of confronting something that defies expectation or explanation. It's not just a film. This is a rite of passage for horror fans. At number 3, we step back to 1980 and The Shining. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Need I say more? Stanley Kubrick's movie The Shining is a hypnotic descent into madness. Loosely adapted from Stephen King's novel, The Shining takes us to the Overlook Hotel, a sprawling, isolated lodge that seems to have a mind of its own. Jack Nicholson's performance as Jack Torrance is legendary. Watching his slow unraveling from loving father to homicidal maniac is terrifying and mesmerizing. And then there's the imagery. Kubrick fills the screen with unforgettable moments. The elevator of blood, the ghostly twins in the hallway, and of course, here's Johnny. These aren't just scares, they're etched into the fabric of pop culture. And I think something that makes The Shining truly special, though, is its ambiguity. Is it a ghost story? A tale of inherited madness? Or something even darker? Because Kubrick doesn't hand us answers. He gives us clues, but he lets everything just linger for you to decide for yourself. This isn't just a haunted house film. it's a haunting itself. We're almost there, down to the final two. But before I unveil my top picks, let's take a moment to honor the incredible films that just missed the cut. For me, these are the unsung heroes of horror, the films that define their subgenres and deserve just as much recognition. Let's start with The Descent, a claustrophobic nightmare that takes spelunking to horrifying new depths. Then there's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, a psychological tour de force driven by powerhouse performances from Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. How about Nosferatu and Bride of Frankenstein? These classics paved the way for modern horror, proving that terror doesn't just need CGI to be effective. And we can't forget The Fly, Audition, or Funny Games, each a masterclass in making us squirm in our seats. Other honorable mentions include 1931's M, a chilling early example of the psychological thriller, 1979's Phantasm, with its surreal, dreamlike terror, 2004's Shaun of the Dead, a love letter to horror fans wrapped in humor and gore. And let's not overlook the cult classics, Reanimator, Gremlins, The Evil Dead, and An American Werewolf in London. Each brought something wildly unique to the table, blending humor, gore, and innovation in ways only horror can. These films didn't quite make the top 25, but they're just as essential for any horror fan's watch list. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the final two. These are the films that sit at the apex of horror for me. Movies that didn't just scare me, but transformed the way that I viewed horror. Are you ready? Let's dive into what I view as the best of the best. Coming in at number 2 is a film that redefines what it means to blend terror with sheer absurdity. Buckle up, horror fans, because it's Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2: Dead by Dawn, the ultimate carnival of chaos. Now let's be clear, this isn't just a sequel. It is the perfect reinvention. Raimi takes the foundation he built in The Evil Dead, and he dials it up to 11. More blood, more laughs, more madness. Imagine you're on a roller coaster, but instead of thrilling twists, it's spraying you with gallons of fake blood and throwing demonic possession in your face at every turn. That's Evil Dead 2. And at the heart of this wild ride, the incomparable Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams. This is the movie where Ash evolves from the hapless survivor into a full-blown horror icon. The chainsaw arm, the boomstick, the devil-may-care attitude, it all started here. Campbell's physical comedy is pure genius, from his over-the-top battle with Deadites to that unforgettable scene where his own hand turns against him. It's slapstick horror gold. But what makes Evil Dead 2 so unforgettable is its perfect balance of horror and humor. Raimi's camera work is kinetic, almost alive, with those wild tracking shots that make you feel like the evil is literally chasing you. The special effects, though charmingly low budget, are imaginative and grotesque, whether it's geysers of blood, grotesque stop-motion animation, or the iconic deerhead laughing maniacally on the wall. This film isn't just a horror comedy, it's a love letter to the genre, proving that you can terrify and entertain in equal measure. Whether you're laughing, screaming, or both, Evil Dead 2 delivers, and that's why it lands so high on my list. And now, we've arrived. Number 1. The pinnacle of horror cinema. The film that redefined what it means to truly be terrified. The one that feels like a raw nerve, exposed and unflinching. I'm talking about Tobe Hooper's 1974 masterpiece, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is not just a movie, it's an experience. From the opening moments with the eerie flashbulb sound and the chilling narration, you know you're about to witness something you'll never forget. And you're right. Set in the sweltering Texas heat, this film feels suffocating, almost oppressive, like the atmosphere itself is trying to crush you. It's the story of 5 friends who stumble upon a nightmare. A family of cannibals, led by the unforgettable Leatherface. And let's talk about Leatherface. He's not just a villain, he's a force of nature. The mask made of human skin, the guttural grunts, the sheer brutality of his movements. It's the stuff of nightmares. And yet there's a tragic undercurrent to him, as if he's a victim of this twisted family dynamic. That complexity makes him one of the most compelling figures in horror history. But what sets the Texas Chainsaw Massacre apart, though, is its raw and unrelenting realism. There's not a drop of glossy Hollywood sheen here. The grainy cinematography, the documentary-like pacing, it all feels too real. Hooper doesn't rely on over-the-top gore. Instead, he creates terror through suggestion, through sound, through the relentless, high-pitched whine of a chainsaw cutting through the air. And then there's the dinner scene. If you haven't seen it, you need to, but if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is one of the most horrifying sequences ever put to film. Pure chaos, madness, and dread, all wrapped up in one unforgettable moment. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a cultural phenomenon. It paved the way for so many films that followed, but none have quite captured its raw power. Its influence is immeasurable, and its impact on the genre eternal. And that's why, 50 years later, it's still number 1. And there you have it. My top 25 horror films of all time. From the chainsaw-wielding terror of Leatherface to the blood-soaked hilarity of Ash Williams, this list is a journey through decades of fear, innovation, and unforgettable moments. But what about you? Did your favorites make the cut? Were there any glaring omissions that have you shouting at your phone right now? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments or share them on social media. You can find me at Real Talk on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, at Real Talk Pod on X or Twitter or whatever. Email therealrealtalk@gmail.com. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more horror goodness. Until next time, horror fans, keep the lights low, the doors locked, and stay scared.
Creeping through the silence dark, whispers in the midnight park. The night is cold, there's no escape. Ghostly figures take their shape. Play a twisted game. Fear and terror stake their claim. Footsteps follow close behind. Haunting thoughts invade your mind. Run away, but they won't go. In the darkness, fear will grow. Midnight whispers start to speak. Every corner hides a fear. Close your eyes, they're drawing near. Candles flicker, spirits call. In the night they'll take it all. Midnight strikes, the clocks rewind. Nightmares now are intertwined.